Good afternoon, Mr. Stewart and Mr. Rochon. I'm Rob Kittredge, representing the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And I only have 5 minutes today, so just to make efficient use of my time, I'm going to direct my questions to Mr. Stewart. So I apologize for leaving you out. Can we bring up document SSM CAN 1096_REL.0001, please? And this is the document that my friend representing the convoy organizers was trying to show you earlier on when he ran out of time. Mr. Stewart, the Liberal Research Bureau is an entity within the Liberal Party that receives government funds, conducts research, and provides briefs to support the Liberal Party politicians, ministers, and MPs, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay. You're not familiar with the Liberal Research Bureau at all?
No, I have nothing to do with it.
And you've never heard of it?
Oh, I've heard of it, but I didn't know what it does.
You have no idea at all what it does?
No.
Okay. So this document on the screen, would you agree that it appears to be a brief preparing MPs as to what they should say in response to the motion and in debate in response to the motion to support the invocation of the Emergencies Act?
Certainly how it appears.
All right. Can we scroll to page 4, please? Towards the bottom of page 4. And you can see here at the bottom of page 4, it outlines the CPC's position, the BQ's position, and the NDP's position, which it indicates that the NDP will support the motion. Would you agree with that?
That's what I observe.
Right. And in your dealings with the ministers and elected executives, they told you that before the Emergencies Act was invoked, they already had the support of the NDP to uphold the invocation, didn't they?
No, they did not.
When did you first learn that the NDP were going to support the invocation of the Act?
Upon the vote.
Okay. Are you aware of any polling that was done to assess public support for the invocation of the Emergencies Act?
Not aware.
All right. All right, and moving on a little bit. Numerous witnesses from the OPP and the OPS have testified that the invocation of the Act may have been helpful, but it was not necessary to clear the protests. Would you agree with them on that point?
I believe that the invocation of the Act provided very useful tools to law enforcement.
Useful tools, but not necessary tools.
Well, I'm not in a position to render an opinion on that. I don't think. I would only observe, as I've observed already, that upon the invocation of the Act and the use of those tools, the protests diminished and stopped. And that goes beyond useful.
When discussing the invocation of the Act in an email on the night of February 14th, you indicated that the emergency powers didn't bring a lot of significant benefits, didn't you?
I acknowledge that was perhaps an underestimate on my part.
Right. But you were, at that point, you were having trouble even coming up with examples of how the emergency powers might be useful in clearing the protests, weren't you?
I was encouraging my colleague, for the purposes of doing technical briefings, to try to be more specific and clear.
Right, but you were running out of ideas on how it might be useful.
The ideas were already on the table in the sense of the drafting of the various orders and measures. The issue here was how they were explained.
Right. Provincial powers at that point hadn't been exhausted, had they?
In Ontario, I would say they had.
You would. Your interview summary indicates that you thought that the power to compel tow trucks was important. Do you remember that?
I do.
But really, you have no personal knowledge of whether that power was actually necessary to clear the protests, do you?
It was reported to ministers, and I was present at this time, that was an important element and was used.
You have no knowledge at all of whether tow trucks had already been retained by the OPP prior to the invocation of the Act, do you?
I do not.
Right. And you have no direct knowledge of whether the power to compel tow trucks was useful to police anywhere in Canada, do you? Really?
No first-hand knowledge.
Right. Similarly, while you suggest that the declaration of emergency, the financial measures, and the other emergency powers may have acted as a deterrent, you don't actually have any direct knowledge of that, do you?
Well, that's a hypothetical. In light of my observation that the protests were significantly de-escalated and stopped, I think deterrence was a major factor.
So you'd speculate that the invocation of the act had a deterrent effect, but you don't actually know that.
That was its intent.
Pardon me?
That was its intent.
But you'd speculate that it was effective.
It's hard to observe it in the.
Right. So you have no real direct knowledge that it did have that effect. You just speculate that it had that effect.
Okay, you could call it speculation. I would call it conclusion.
Okay. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.